just to add a little bit of, I don't know, a little bit of spice, let's talk about this extermination order. First of all, besides the fact that it's completely unconstitutional to allow anyone to kill anyone for any reason, let alone a religious reason, let's talk about how long this was a law in the books. So, all the time, laws become like ineffective, people kind of forget about them, they're not actually implemented, but they're still technically laws that could be implemented if someone decided to do it. This extermination order was still a law clear up until the 1970s. Let that sink in just for a second. Up until the 1970s, it was technically legal to kill a Mormon in Missouri. Right? And in fact, parts of that law was not taken out and not was still part of the law until the 1990s. That at that point, the Mormons got an official apology, which deserved. I don't care who you are, you don't kill someone based off of their religion. Okay, moving on. Missouri is also where we have the massacre at Haun's Mill. We're not going to go into this in too much detail, but after that extermination order was given, there is a place called Haun's Mill. This is where a lot of the Mormons worked. The militia came in, surrounded the mill. They decided to hunker down and fight because there's nothing left for them to do. And they literally killed every single person they could find. Man, woman, child, didn't matter. It was really ugly. And needless to say, they moved. So far we've gone New York, then we've gone Kirtland, Ohio, then we've gone to Missouri. Now we're going to go to a place called Nauvoo, Illinois. Now, when they picked Nauvoo, they literally picked the edge of civilization. Nobody was settling on the west side of the Mississippi River unless they were going to California. But that's a whole other thing, right? Going to clear out to California. But the Mississippi River is really like the edge of civilization. So they go to the edge of civilization. Nobody will bug us out there. No one will care what we are. And they didn't even move into an existing town. They picked this land that was literally swampland. And they went in and they put in drains and stuff like that so that they could actually live in this place and not have it be swampy. So if any of you guys have ever driven out like to Wellsville, Petersboro on 2nd North in Logan, you'll drive through swamps and you can see there's nothing out there because swamps are kind of the worst if you want to build a house. So they drained it all, made it all livable, but you also have to understand as they're doing this, what kind of insect likes water, especially still water? Mosquitoes. What do mosquitoes carry? Disease. So there's a lot of people who died in this effort too. Okay, so now Illinois, Nauvoo. When they get to Nauvoo, it ends up turning into this beautiful city. This is the Joseph Smith Mansion. Okay, so this is where Joseph Smith lived. At this time, it was a mansion. What it really ended up being was more like a hotel. He would open his home to any Mormon person who was coming to join their church. So at this point in time, I know right now there's Mormons all over the world. They do not have to come and live in Salt Lake to practice their religion. At this point in time in the history of this church, that's what had to happen. If you were to be converted, you moved to where the Mormons were. Otherwise, you'd be by yourself and there was really nothing that you could do. So if you were going to be Mormon, you went and you lived with the Mormons. Period. That's how it worked. So when people came, a lot of them spent all of their money to get there and then didn't have anything once they got there. So this was kind of, it was like a hotel is the best way to think about it. People would come in, they'd take care of them, get them set up with jobs, and then help them get into their own place. Okay, so when we talk about Nauvoo, Nauvoo literally translates to mean beautiful. Now, when they named it this, you got to imagine seeing this nasty swampland, thinking this is where we're going to live. This is going to be the last place that we go because no one wants this land. No one will bug us here. So we're going to name it beautiful. And hopefully one day it'll be beautiful. So that was kind of the hopes behind that. They were there from 1838 to 1846, and there ended up being about 20,000 people who live there. This made it the largest city in the entire state of Illinois. We just barely talked about this. When you have a big city like that, you get a lot of political power. Like a lot of political power. So think about all the laws in Utah that only make sense if you live in Salt Lake. All the laws that cater to the biggest city in the state. Is there a lot of them? Absolutely. If everyone lived out in the outskirts of town, out in these rural cities like we do, is there going to be a lot of those laws that are completely unnecessary? Yeah, absolutely, because you cater to the population. Okay, whatever works for the biggest chunk of people is what you do. This is now the biggest population in the entire state. Is that going to make the rest of the state antsy and nervous? Yes, absolutely. It is going to make the rest of the state antsy and nervous. Okay, and I don't know if you noticed on that first picture I showed you of Illinois, but they also built a temple while they were there. So they have a new temple. They have a new home. They feel like they finally found the spot that they're going to stay forever. And so they love it and they're so, so excited. This is not the end of their story. Okay, a couple of things I want to point out before we go any further. At this point, did you guys know Joseph Smith ran for president? He did, and he failed miserably, but he tried. He actually had almost a Bernie Sanders type platform, as in like socialism. Okay, a lot of people don't know that. It's just kind of an interesting fact to go over. That's what he did. So he ran for president. He didn't make it, obviously, because he wasn't a president, and there's that. Okay, so they worked on this temple for 7 years. Once they were kicked out, they're like, you know what? Here's our choices. If we just leave our beautiful building here, what's going to happen? I mean, there wasn't really much choice because the mobs came, but they burned it down. But they were actually very grateful that they burned it down because then they didn't have to see someone else use it and kind of defile it in their mind. Okay, while this is all happening, before they actually leave Nauvoo, Joseph Smith is martyred. Okay, so the term martyred is really similar to murdered. The difference is if you're martyred, you're killed because of your belief. Okay, and then the rest of your religion will almost hold you in like reverence. Doesn't mean that they're worshipped, okay, but they hold him in very high esteem. So they take Joseph Smith, they take his brother, whose name is Hyrum. They also take a couple other people, and they put him in this jail. So the building there on the left is the jail. This town is just outside of Nauvoo, a couple of miles. When they're there, I think that they knew that they were going to be killed. At least they had some sort of inkling. They had been through all of the mobs before, and it was just kind of like this ominous feeling when they got taken away this time. So when they're taken away, all of a sudden the mobs surround this jail. It's called Carthage Jail. And when it is happening, they see the mobs coming through the window. They try and hold the door shut. And so they start shooting through the door. Okay, so Joseph's brother is killed. Another guy is shot in the chest, but it actually bounces off his pocket watch. Joseph Smith runs for the window. He's shot as he's falling out the window. Okay, so he is killed. So not only are they getting kicked out of the city that they think is like their end all, their last place they're going to have to move to, but now all of a sudden their prophet and their leader is killed too. So this is like a really, really difficult time for all of the church. So they decide that they are going to move, and this is where Utah comes in. They are going to move to the farthest place that they could possibly think of away from anyone else, but they're going to have to move everything that they have. So this is where wagons come in. So they gather everything that they possibly can in the amount of time that they have as the mobs are coming at them, and they leave. Okay, let me go back and show you this picture. So this picture right here, is it summertime? No, it's not summertime. It's very cold. They're walking across the river because it's frozen. So when they go, they end up staying at this place in Nevada. Okay, so after Nauvoo, the next place that they go is winter quarters, and not Nevada, Nebraska. Winter quarters is in Nebraska. What they do in winter quarters is they wait out the winter until they can go farther. So in winter quarters, they waited for conditions to get better. They waited for the weather to get better. They waited until it was feasible for them to leave and actually survive the trek. At this place, there's over 800 shelters that are there that are housing people. A lot of the population stayed there until 1848. Okay, so a lot of them stayed until people are actually in Utah. This first year, over 700 people died from freezing temperatures. A lot of these cabins, you could look through and just see straight across and straight through. They didn't know that they were going to be leaving, so they didn't have proper places to go and stay. So it was actually a really terrible spot. So this is going to be the last town that they go to before they start making their way and doing the actual like pioneer stuff you think of in hiking across the plains. So now we're going to start talking about landmarks. The first landmark that you see. So a landmark is like something that you see that lets you know how far you are, like how far it is until you're there. So on your way to Salt Lake, think of some landmarks that you see. When you're going through, you hit Manaway in the canyon and you're like, okay, like 5 minutes left and then we're in Brigham. Okay, so that's a landmark. When you're on your way to Salt Lake, maybe you see Lagoon and you're like, oh, there's Lagoon. Okay, we are almost there. That's a landmark. So a landmark is letting you know, one, that you're on the right path, and two, about how long you have left until you reach your destination. So this is a landmark. So this is your first landmark, is Chimney Rock. It's called Chimney Rock because it looks like a chimney. Okay, so then they see this and they know that they're going and they're on their path. Let's talk about some hardships that they see, that you face when you're on the trails. Okay, first of all, you're leaving and there's not a lot of time between leaving in the spring, getting there in time to actually like plant some crops and grow some food before winter hits. So a lot of it is a race against the weather. So a lot of times there's snow when they're hiking, whether there's snow when they're leaving or they left late. And so when they get there, there's snow when they're arriving. That's what that top left picture is, okay? And the bottom right picture. There's rivers to cross. There's snow on the ground, freezing temperatures. Okay, there's problems with Native Americans who are not liking seeing these people coming and invading their home. And so some of them attack. So there's a lot of attacking that comes along with that. Not everyone experienced that, but a lot of people did. Okay, there's a lot of disease. That's what that next black and white picture on the second row is. If someone gets a disease, is there a hospital you can go to? No, there's like nothing you can do. So there's a lot of deaths and a lot of like trail side graves that people get left in. And they had to dig the grave deep enough and put rocks over it and stuff so that they wouldn't get scavenged by animals. There's a lot of snakes, okay? A lot of little critters that are poisonous that could hurt you. There's wagons and pieces and components that can break. There's really terrible food because all of the food you're going to eat you have to carry with you. So those biscuits is just flour and water and then you cook it and good luck. Okay, and then there's storms. That bottom middle picture is not from this time at all, but just to illustrate that there is a lot of physical storms, dust storms, okay, thunderstorms. That wind, that's going to come and affect you a lot. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong as you're taking this trip, walking halfway across the desert to try and find this new home.